Hello and welcome to my talk at the conference, How to Make Your Code Reviews Awesome, Recipes for Better Code Reviews. In this talk I'm going to go through the process of code reviews. It's not super technical talk, it's more about how to make your team interact and your process a bit better. So let's dive in. But first, a couple of words about myself. My name is Maxim Pryakin and I'm team lead software developer at InnoGames. I work in the game industry for 12 years and I worked on different development positions. Currently I'm a tech lead or team lead software development, which means that I lead a small team of developers as a part of bigger development team. My job, aside of writing code itself, is also to ensure that our development process are using best practices and that we create high quality games in pragmatic and rapid way. In the past, I also had experience of drawing a little bit, so I decided to remember my old skills and provide little bit illustrating doodles to make this talk a little nicer. So for instance, this illustration which you can see here, it's me drawn by me, and you will see more in the presentation. I hope you like them. A couple of words about my company. InnoGames, it's a company based in Germany, in Hamburg, and it's a mobile development company. We have multiple titles, and it's the biggest German game developer company. We have city builder games, a little bit multiplayer, competitive games, whole range. So let's jump to table of contents. First of all, on overall, first we'll talk about what is code review. To make common ground, so when I say what is pull request or code review, we have same understanding. After that, we will talk about how to improve code review process, what kind of best practices on general you can apply. And after that, we will go to a bit lower level and we see how a person who creates code review, who creates a code, can make this process a bit easier and nicer. And then we will talk how to nail your job as a code reviewer, as someone who reviews the code. And final and most interesting part for me, we'll talk about psychology of code reviews, as code reviews require interaction between team members with providing feedback and sometimes even critique. It always can be a sensitive topic, so we'll talk about that as well. But before jumping to code reviews itself, let's establish a few basic rules. In our company, we follow these rules. So we use Git and Git branches to develop features. And that means that we have our master branch, its main branch, which is supposed to be stable and always in playable state and good quality. And developers create their features or their bug fixes in separate branches. And after that, they try to merge them to the master branch. So there is the first rule. No one merges their own code on their own. After the developer created their branch, they cannot just merge it to master. And second rule, never push directly to master. As well, nobody should be able to commit directly to master, as it's way too easy to introduce some behavior breaking changes or bugs or issues. And master has to be stable and has to be reviewed by a few pair of eyes before something appears there. And third rule, never ever push directly to master. So actually there are two simple rules. I just wanted to emphasize this point. So, what are code reviews? As we have the strict rules, so we cannot push and we cannot commit directly to master, what is correct way? For us, correct way is a code reviews. Code review is an act of consciously and systemically convening with one's fellow programmers to check each other's code for mistakes. But this can mean a lot of things. It can mean big round code reviewing, we can mean sitting behind the shoulder and watching, etc. For me, what I will talk today is more classical definition. So we have an author, somebody who writes the code, and the reviewer. It can be a peer developer or maybe even external reviewer outside of the team. The author first creates his branch, writes the code, and when he wants to merge it back to master, he creates a pull request. Can be done via Bitbucket directly, or with GitLab or GitHub, depending on the environment which you use. After that, reviewer takes this code, reviews it, and provides some comments and notes, and sends it back. Author reacts on that, changes something maybe, and send it again to the reviewer. This goes through rounds till reviewer says, okay, looks good to me. And after that, the author can merge it to master. So that's what we call a code review process. Why is it harder than it looks? When a programmer sends you a change list where they think it's awesome, and you write them an extensive list of reasons why it's not awesome, that's a sensitive message to get across. And it's very easy to the author to miss opportunity and purpose, why do we do it, and not take it personal, and not to take it personal, and he can not think that he's not competent. And especially if it's done via text, it can be easily misinterpreted. So your peer thinks that his code is awesome, and you need to explain him that he might be a bit wrong. And this can lead, for instance, to this feeling. We will touch this extensively in the last part of my presentation about psychology of code reviews, how to make it better. But before that, let's talk why do we do code reviews. So we have the definition, now why. One thing is to improve feature and purpose, to verify feature and purpose completion. So the reviewer checks that everything is complete, everything is done, and it's complete. Next, check for potential side effects. Ensure that there is no weird extra behavior which is not intended, not brought into their code base. Readability and maintenance. It's very important, as you know, mostly we work with not writing new code, but with fixing and improving existing one. So readability and maintenance is very important and has to be checked during the code review. Consistency. As we do code reviews, we want to ensure that code is consistent with the rest of the code base. We also check performance and simplicity of implementation and see if there can be some improvements there. Another important point is reuse of existing code. It's often possible people who has lack of knowledge of different parts of the system, they can introduce something which was already done and bring unintentionally some code duplication. And this is one point which you want to avoid it. And that's why we also try to find possibility to reuse existing code. And of course, checking test coverage. If you use TDD, to check that the new code, new changes are covered according to your team's rules. Additional benefits. Committers improve their pull requests, so there's consistent improvement, and also not just in this pull request, but in future pull requests. Sharing knowledge. During pull request, there's also constant knowledge sharing, although it should not be main knowledge sharing channel, but it's still valuable knowledge sharing channel. There are also other which also should be utilized. And improving architecture and design. Although design should be done front of, so before changes are introduced, still code review is a good time to reflect on it and do suggestions how to improve it, especially in the future. So let's jump in first in overall general improvements for pull requests process. First of all, I highly recommend you to settle style arguments with a style guide. Arguments about style are a waste of time in reviews. Consistent style is certainly very important, but a code review is not the time to bicker about where to put the curly braces and how to use tabs or spaces. And the best way to excise style debates from your code reviews is by keeping a style guide. Once defined, it can be referenced in any code review and allows you to discuss important parts, which can be like performance or simplicity or other main points why we do code reviews. Make a computer do the boring part. For instance, it can do code styles. So you can discuss performance instead of code style, set up your environment, set up your IDE to do code styles for you, to just go there and apply it automatically. Easy, very helpful. Of course, this doesn't require, but still good to remind, automate your running of unit tests and integration tests. Also, having written tests allows you to concentrate a bit more on more important parts instead of just testing your feature or the author's feature during code review. And code smells. You can take little step further and use static code analyzers. For instance, we use SonarQube for C# and Unity to analyze the code and to find common code smells. So this, you can in code review concentrate on other things. So this is just very basic general things which you can do to improve pull request process. Now let's go a little bit deeper and tell what you as an author of the code of the new changes can do to make your pull request awesome. So when you code, very important to keep a proper scope and size. Changes should have narrow, well-defined, self-containing scope that they cover exhaustively. For example, a change may implement a new feature or fix a bug. Shorter changes are always preferred over longer changes. If your code review makes substantive changes to more than 7 files, so a pull request, a lot of changes with many files, or takes a long time to review, or takes a lot of time to develop, that's considered to split them into smaller self-contained code reviews. You can split it on different principles, but it always, like, in one code review can be a bug fix, and other one could be a feature, and not in one jammed in one code review. In order to save reviewers time, and it's said that I have to remind it often, as I see it's constantly being broken, you need to self-review and self-test your solution. Before submitting a code review, compare it by diff to master, see that everything's there, there's no unintended things leaked there into your code review, and of course run tests. Run builds, ensure that everything goes on your continuous integration servers if you have ones, before assigning reviews. So complete, self-reviewed, and self-tested. Separate refactoring and behavior changing changes. This is very important. I really like this rule. Why is it important? Refactoring changes should not alter behavior, as well known. It's about improving code-based performance or code quality in general without altering the behavior. But usually it touches a lot of files. And there's multiple good reasons why we should keep them separated in that case. As refactor changes often touch so many lines of files, and they will be consequently reviewed with less attention. That means unintended behavior can leak into the code base without anyone noticing very easily. So try to avoid it by separating them. Another reason, large refactoring changes, they break cherry picking, rebasing, and other source control magic. It's very onerous to undo behavior change introduced by part of whole repo wide refactoring commit. So separate it. It's good practice. Make commit messages descriptive. So write your commit messages in the imperative way. Usually I can see often in past tense. People use past tense and they write like fix the bug or fixes the bug. It's better to be consistent with, if you use Git for instance, Git generates automatic messages with imperative way. So merge something to something or revert something from something. That's how Git provides it. And I also recommend to use imperative way. Why is that? Because when you read your list of your commits, you can retrace action by action what was done. And you can read it like you read a recipe. For instance, when you cook, it's a good metaphor, when you cook, you also read cut potato, boil potato, mash potato, have food in the end. And same way as a recipe, you can read commit messages as a recipe how to make a feature. And retrace steps way easier. Of course, for that, you also need to fill necessary details in your commits. You need to ensure that these details are concise and full. should not be useless commits. And make your commits grained, which means as you make them smaller, it's easier to revert them if necessary, cherry pick them, and retrace them. Of course, there is some downsides as your history can grow a bit, but in general, it's a good practice, especially for code review. You can squash your commits later. So here's an example of bad commit message. Compiling again. What's compiling? Why is compiling? It's hard to understand and doesn't give much information for us. And a good commit message instead of this one would be add package dependency to fix Unity compilation error. Here we can use imperative language. We can easily understand what was done and how. Next, let's go a bit to pull request description. So when you create your pull request with Bitbucket or GitLab or GitHub, no matter what, you can provide a description or overview. This is an example of bad overview. Johnny Codeman create new pull request and it's empty. It just has some text and that's it. It's very hard for the reviewer to jump on it, and because he'll need to dig it a lot into understand what is happening there. Way better way. So we can do a few things to improve it and make it proper. First of all, provide quick summary of work being done. Provide explanation what actually was done. You can also include whole list of your commits with and like a recipe. The reviewer can retrace steps. A link to any related GitHub, Jira, or GitLab issues. Whatever you use, provide links so the reviewer can quickly jump and see what's it about. A link or screenshot to original design work, game design or UI design, so you can the reviewer can see what was intended to be implemented. And of course, examples and explanations, especially important. Explanations why you did it the way you did, because that's most important thing, to provide reasoning why you implemented it this way. And you also can add, where it can be useful, step-by-step test scenarios, how they can test it or how you test it. You have tested it. So here's an example of a way better code pull request description created by Alice Sinierson. It has links to a Jira ticket, so it can be easily visited there and check it out. It provides additional links for additional documentation about why it was implemented the way. It provides a list of changes and commits. It provides screenshots with which allows to get a little bit more information. And in general, it's way nicer to start and gives good context in the beginning. But we can take it a little step further and enhance our pull request with a little GIF. You can include GIFs into overview. You can make it fun GIF to convey some emotions, to make it a little bit funny, or you can add helpful GIF and provide GIF of how feature works in reality. You can use one of many programs to capture your screen, to capture stuff from your device if you test on device, and provide it as a part of pull request. It's way nicer when you can see what is it about in real time, instead of jumping, trying to understand and go through screenshots or description or run completely on your own. But we can take it even more step further and use some of many software which allows you to record, like I'm recording this video, allows you to record a little walkthrough. And 5 minutes of this little walkthrough recorded video can save up to 30 minutes of reviewer times, as they provide good context and explanation and everything in one place. Especially nice, nice solution when you work on different schedules or remote work. And now with coronavirus, you know, we all work so far from each other, and to provide these little videos can be very helpful. So I recommend it. So we talk about how to prepare pull requests and how to make it nice. Let's talk now how to become an amazing reviewer and do your job and nail your job as a reviewer. So first of all, why is it harder than it looks? Yeah, it's a little bit about your ego. Sometimes you often can propose your realization, which you think is more correct from best practices, patterns, and other things. But it's an important thing to understand here that solution which you see in the code is better of your own by only the fact that it exists. It's already written. The developer who wrote it used their time, their effort to implement it, to integrate it, to test it, and with other systems to write automated tests, etc., etc. So you should correct code drastically only if this solution is completely incorrect. So be careful and be conscious about your own ego when you do the pull requests, when you do work of reviewing a pull request. What kind of main principles you can use and should use when you do a code review as a reviewer? First of all, try to understand what this code does this code accomplish the author's purpose. Every change should have a specific reason to be. It can be new feature or refactoring or bug fix or something else. Does the submitted code actually accomplish this purpose? After that, before even looking to a solution itself, just by reading the problem, try to think about how would you solve the problem. Although you don't want to force your design, but it's still good to think about your way you would approach it. And after that, you can check out the code and see if it's different from yours, from your mental model. And if it's different, why is that? Does your code handle more edge cases or not? Is it shorter or easier or cleaner or faster and yet functionally equivalent? Is there some underlying pattern you spotted which isn't captured with current code? So all these things allows you to provide better feedback and also maybe not fixing this direct pull request, but in future pull requests. Try to catch authors taking shortcuts or missing edge cases by coming up with problematic configurations and input data, which breaks their code. Think like an adversary, but be nice about it. It's important, we'll talk about this later in psychology part of the talk, but be nice. And also, of course, think about libraries or existing product code, which can be reused, or how this code will affect existing product code. So always keep in mind bigger context when you are reviewing somebody else's code. To nail your job as a reviewer, start as soon as possible. Code reviews should have highest priority. If your colleague sent you a list of changes, they basically blocked this feature of this topic till they get your feedback. So when you start reviewing immediately, you create a positive feedback loop, and which also would affect you as well later when you create your own pull request. My recommendation is to have 1 day as maximum for pull requests for one round. That's probably best what you can do. Be generous with code examples. When you do a code review, be generous with code examples. Try to, instead of writing, can we simplify this with a list comprehension, for instance? This can annoy a lot the reviewer, especially if they don't know this, what you mean or what is kind of this topic, because they never used this. They can spend 20 minutes researching it, but instead you can just provide actual example, what is it and how to do that. Or if you suggest renaming of some class or a method, you can provide already example or suggestion. It's not only goes with single line code, single line suggestions. It also goes through bigger one. For instance, sometimes I just create separate branch from this pull request, and there try to demonstrate my idea. For instance, if I splitting of the bigger function into smaller functions, and after that I can just send link to this to this separate branch and provide my idea better. So be generous with code examples. Stay high level and work your way down. More notes you have in one round, more discouraged and even depressed the author can become. Certain limit is different from developer to developer, but general around 20 or 30 notes, it starts to get very depressing to review them, as it's just too much overwhelming. Plus, your low-level notes will become obsolete, can become obsolete very easily in the next round. So in the first rounds, try to stay high level and let lower level comments and suggestions to come later. Limit feedback on repeated patterns. You don't have to write 25 times same over and over and over again, fix some underscore or little method naming or some line change. Of course, first of all, it should be handled by code styles, but if it's something else which is repeated, write it once and ask the author to review the rest of his files and his changes to ensure that it's fixed everywhere. And respect the scope of the review. It's very easy to break this rule, but I suggest to be careful about it. It often can be very easy to see a little change somewhere outside of the scope and suggest to fix it. But it can quickly grow as a snowball, and you can ask for request additional changes. Try to stay in the scope. If it's something very trivial, yes, you can ask. If it's not, create additional requests to do it in separate topic, feature, or task. Okay, that's it on how to improve your job as a reviewer. I hope this advice is useful. And now this is most interesting part for me is psychology of code reviews. The dynamics between the reviewers and the code's author a critical aspect of peer reviews. Users should focus on what they observed about the game and the code changes, and thoughtfully select the words they use to raise an issue. Because it can be so easy to get offended when somebody provides you critical feedback on your code or suggestions in a bad way. So let's talk what kind of principles and what kind of tips and tricks we can use to mitigate this. First of all, critique the code and not the author. What does it mean? That means, as with regular feedback advice, you should try to critique the behavior or the actual work and not the person. What does it mean in practice? Never say you. If you say you, it can sound like a command. Try to avoid that. Frame your feedback as requests and not commands. For instance, if you can replace you with we and add can. So instead of move the full class to a separate file, it will become can we move the full class to a separate file. It's way softer and nicer. Or you can try to remove subject from the sentence whatsoever. Instead of writing rename this, you can write what about renaming this. Request also makes it easier for the author to push back politely. Maybe they have a good reason for their choice to do this way, but it's harder to push back on commands. As well, try to differentiate between suggestions when you suggest something as an optional and required changes, which can be more strict. And justify your opinion, already mistaken. Justify by principles and not by opinions. When you want to bring some change or when you suggest some change, provide good reason for this change. Instead of saying we should split this class into two because you like it or just because that's a good thing, it's better to say we should separate these classes because it goes with solid principles and separation of concerns. It provides better reasoning and allows to discuss it in more productive way. So justify by principles and not opinions. While your teammate might, in theory, wants to explore every opportunity to improve their code, their patience is actually finite. They'll quickly grow frustrated if you withhold approval of their pull requests after round, after another round, and can go for a long time because you keep thinking of new and brilliant ways to polish their change list. They're a good metaphor of grade system. Like in school, you have grades Like if you take American grade system, you have A, B, C, D, where A is highest grade and D is lowest. And when you want to improve the code in code review and change it in code review, try to bring it by 1 or 2 grades. Try to bring from grade D to grade C, from grade C to grade B or A. You might think, but if I accept C grade code, won't I end up with a C grade code base, so lower quality code base? But fortunately, I think it's not the case. I find that when I help a teammate to go from a D grade to a C grade, the next time they create a pull request and send me change list, they say they will start with the C already, because they learn, of course. And within a few months, they will start sending me reviews that begin as a B grade, and which will become A after the code review. So with time, it gets improved. Don't try to push it to best possible quality right away. Not perfect, but good enough. I have a typo in just noticed I have a typo. It's supposed to be not bug, but. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, move on. Stop giving depressing code reviews. Most reviewers focus only on what's wrong with the code, but reviews is also a valuable opportunity to reinforce positive behaviors. For example, imagine you are reviewing for the author which struggles to write good documentation, and you come across a clear and concise function comment. Let them know about that. Let them know that they nailed it. They'll improve faster if you tell them that they got it right instead of waiting for them to screw up. Offer and provide sincere praise. Of course, it should be sincere. It should not be fake. And you don't need a specific reason to offer praise. Anytime when I see something in change list which delights me, I tell the author about it. For instance, I wasn't aware of this API. This is really useful. Or this is an elegant solution. I never would have thought of that. Or breaking up this function was a great idea. It's so much simpler now. Especially if the author is a junior or new to the team, they are likely to feel nervous or a bit defensive during a review. And sincere compliments ease this tension by demonstrating that you are a supportive teammate and there's good positive environment in the team. So offer sincere praise. And put some trust in your fellow developers. If you see that after a few rounds, only very trivial fixes left, which you mentioned, you don't have to wait for another round to see that they are fixed. Trust them that they will fix it and approve it and mark it as give them looks good to me. So approve if only trivial fixes left. But sometimes, unfortunately, deadlock can appear, which means that code review is stuck and not getting better and getting stuck for a long time and not getting resolved. There are a few indicators that you're heading for this stalemate. The tone of the discussion is growing tense and hostile. You feel tension. Your notes per review, if you are the reviewer, your notes per review are not trending downward and you introduce more and more because code base gets worse. Or you're an author and you see that the reviewer create more and more notes that he's never happy with your changes. Or you're getting pushback on an unusually high number of your notes. This is all signs that you are getting stuck. You should see these signs in advance, and you should not just say, this is fine, I'm okay. No, this has to be handled proactively. Handle this deadlock situation proactively. Talk it out. Of course, if you're in the office, just get up, go to the developer, grab him, and talk together. Take a meeting room, discuss it. If you work remotely, call them and talk together. It's always good to talk it out. As I mentioned before, in the text, it's really easy to misinterpret something, an emotion or an idea. As you know, as everybody knows, on the internet, nobody understands sarcasm, as it's very hard to understand written sarcasm or something. Similar principle applies here as well. Sometimes it's just easier to talk directly. If your views how whole design has to be done is too foundationally different, maybe it makes sense to consider a design review. So re-review is the design. go a little bit back to the basics and try to rethink how it should have been done. But sometimes even this doesn't help and you stuck completely. In that case, you have basically two end options. You either have to concede and say, okay, I'm okay with this and let it go, or you have to, if you're absolutely sure that this is not correct way to do that, or you see a potential big mistake in the future by this approving this pull request, you have to escalate. You have to go to your lead or to a senior developer or higher level and let them help you to resolve this. And after the situation is resolved by one way or another, especially if it's bad, was not good result and you got to the conflict, take some time to recover from the situation. Discuss the situation with your team lead to understand better what happened and why. Take a break from each other for some time and don't do code reviews. Let other teammates to help you with this. And I also can recommend you to study conflict resolution to avoid this in the future a bit better, or to handle it, to learn how to handle it better. Okay, that's it on general ideas. I hope you like them and find them useful. I find them very, very useful because as soon as I applied them to our team and to a few teams which I worked with, it showed very, very quick results in time of code reviews, in better code quality, in better atmosphere. So I really recommend to at least try out to use some of these ideas and rules. And little bonus, there are a few alternative approach to reduce the amount of code reviews, not to do them whatsoever, just to think about. Of course, you can do pair programming. This is well-known practice to basically you do code review while you're writing the code together. So you sit together and write code, and this is kind of like code review, or yeah. Trunk-based development, this is one interesting topic which I encountered over the internet when I was researching. Base idea that some teams don't do code reviews at all. They don't do pull requests. They just merge everything directly to master. So breaking the main rule which I mentioned in the beginning. But they have extensive code test coverage. So everything is covered, very safe automated testing on every commit. So they can always revert quickly back if something's wrong. So their tests are kind of like code reviews. I don't think it would work with game development, as it's hard to cover with tests in general, but it's just interesting to consider. And big round code reviews. That's a practice when you sometimes, on top of regular code reviews, you can do big round. When you get together the whole team and go line by line of some changes and discuss together. And in this discussion, a lot of new ideas can pop out on agreement, can go through the whole team, within the whole team. Okay, so that's it from my side. Thank you so much for listening for my talk. Again, as I said, I hope you found it interesting and helpful. I provide more resources to read, so where you can dive a little deeper to code reviews and best practices. And here's my information, so feel free to contact me anytime you have comments or ideas how I can improve this, or just for whatever, just to connect. I will be happy to connect with you. And for questions and comments, I will be in Discord sometime later, and I will be happy to see any feedback, comments, and questions. Thank you so much, and have a good time. Bye bye.